We're honored this Shabbat to welcome Yolanda Savage-Narva back to our sanctuary after many years. I don't know how it's been many years, but it's been a while. Yolanda Savage-Narva has 20 years of experience working with public agencies and nonprofit organizations to promote equitable access to public health, elder care, and pedestrian safety. She is a CDC-trained public health specialist who has led community-based efforts in community health assessments for the Indian Health Service, public education, for the Alzheimer's Association of Pedestrian Safety and Advocacy for American Walks, and health equity for the National Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. Yolanda was also the executive director of Operation for Understanding DC, which is how she would be with us in the summers for many years, a nonprofit organization dedicating to promoting understanding, cooperation, and respect while fighting to eradicate racism, anti-Semitism, and all forms of discrimination. Operation Understanding always has been coming to BJ for many, many years in the summer as part of their tour of New York, and then they make their way down south. Yolanda's current role is Vice President of READY, Communities of Belonging for the Union for Reform Judaism. She is also a member of the Jew v. Nation cohort, a fellowship sponsored by the URJ, a 2019 Schusterman Fellow, a Vice Chair of the Religious Action Center Commission on Social Action, a co-chair of the Racial Justice Equity Committee for the RAC, a fellow of the Federation of Greater Washington, a member of Temple Micah in Washington, D.C., and a member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority, an international Black sorority dedicated to community and education. Yolanda is a graduate of Tougaloo College and has a master's degree in education from Jackson State University in her spare time. Do you have any spare time? Yolanda loves being outdoors, reading, bird watching, playing sports, and traveling with her family. We're honored to have you here this Shabbat in honor of Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. I would also just say that when we, over a number of years, have been doing our work around undoing racism and leadership, and a number of us interviewed Yolanda a couple of years ago around how we could grow our work here. So she's been a resource for us personally as a community too. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Thank you for such a warm introduction. Something is happening in Memphis. Something is happening in our world. And you know, if I were standing at the beginning of time with the possibility of taking a kind of general and panoramic view of the whole of human history up to now, and the Almighty said to me, Martin Luther King, which age would you live in? I would take my mental flight by Egypt, and I would watch God's children in their magnificent trek from the dark dungeons of Egypt through, or rather across the Red Sea, through the wilderness on toward the Promised Land. And in spite of its magnificence, I wouldn't stop there. That's an excerpt from Dr. King's final and last speech. I've been to the mountaintop. He gave this the day before his assassination. Now, I know we can't travel through time, but we can take mental flight and imagine the future, our future, the one that we want to see. B'nai Jeshurun family, it is an absolute honor to be in this beautiful sanctuary with you this morning. 3 days after King's birthday on the 15th, and 2 days before our country commemorates his birthday on the 20th. This morning, January 18th, a day that is unique and like no other that we have experienced or will experience again. Today is the day we all wait and hope and pray that tomorrow the Gaza ceasefire will take effect. the hostages will begin to be released. The innocent killing will end, and humanitarian aid will flow into Gaza. Today is the day. We know that some of the evacuees from the Eaton and Palisades area can return back to their neighborhoods, and the fires are slowly being contained. Today is the day that we have a new beginning, and we all each have an opportunity to make a difference somewhere with someone. I'd like to thank you all so much for inviting me to give the Devar on this very special Shabbat morning, and for all that you do to make this community warm, vibrant, and beautiful. And I want to thank each and every one of you who are here in the sanctuary today, and those of you who are tuning in virtually for joining us this morning. I want to give a special shout out to my friend Suzanne, who is here with her family in the audience today, and a huge mazal tov to Will for becoming a bar mitzvah. I'm Yolanda Savage-Narva. I use she, her pronouns, and I would like to acknowledge the land that we're sitting on, which was the land, the ancestral home of the Lenape people. Over the past few months, I have been thinking a lot about our country and the world that we live in. As I wrestle with the world as it is, and hope and work towards the world that I am trying to create, the world that I want to leave to my children and their children and our children, I have asked myself big questions that I obviously don't have the answers to, but I ask them anyway. Questions like, how did we get here? How did we get here? What led up to where we are in this very moment? What is my role in helping to move the world closer to the one I dream about? And honestly, I ask the question, when can I take a break? How do I motivate others? And who in history has changed the trajectory of history before? And how can we do it together again? And I must admit, it took me some time to kind of shake out of this despair and hopelessness that I was feeling after November and what happened in November, and remember that the ancestors, they have been here before. They didn't leave us with nothing. We know how to do this. We know how to do this thing of mobilizing and organizing and advocating for justice. And I also realized that I have a faith tradition. I have this 4,000-year-old tradition and religion called Judaism that teaches us to love the stranger and that justice shall prevail. And I also have a spiritual practice called Musar, which means moral conduct. I have the practices and the compass to change my character traits in order to change the world. So today, I ask that I can share a few of my thoughts with you. It's interesting, last night I was in the cab and I was sharing with my cab driver what I was doing, and he comes from a different faith tradition. And interestingly enough, he had something really magical to share. He said, you'll shine your light, and each and every person in that sanctuary is a star. They will reflect that light, and then they will go out and shine it on the world. They will be the catalyst for creating an Olam Hadash, a new world. Because if I can really be honest with you, we have yet to live in a world that values everyone equally. We have yet to live in a just society. I'm not going to dwell on that because the power is within us to create the world that we want to see. And if the past few months has taught me anything, it has taught me that the work will always be unfinished. We're on a journey. As soon as we think we've arrived, the road turns or we hit a detour, and it feels like we're starting all over again. As Dr. King said, the moral arc of the universe is long, but it tends to bend toward justice. But right now, the arc needs each and every one of us because it's flailing out there in the wind. So half of us, let's get behind it and push it. And the other half of us, let's get in front of it and pull it. And then we will begin to mobilize and realize Dr. King's dream of the beloved community. MLK's beloved community has 6 principles. When I think about Dr. King's 6 principles, it reminds me of the work that we are doing at the Union for Reform Judaism to actually create the foundation for fighting racism and all forms of discrimination, and to create a community of belonging through our guiding principles. So I will share each of these principles with you. They're very closely aligned. So principle 1 of the beloved community is nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It is active, nonviolent resistance to evil. It is aggressive, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Principle 1 of a community belonging is holy boldness, azut de kudusha. Treat opportunities for growth as a gift. To boldly call in others. Say the hard things that people are thinking but will not say, and it's all in service to the sacredness of humanity and to improve our capacity to affirm diverse experiences. It embodies the courage and determination to pursue a righteous path, even in the face of adversity. Be strong and strengthen your heart. Principle 2 of the beloved community. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The end result of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. The guiding principle of a community belonging is compassion, rachamim. Demonstrate concern and care for self and others' pain and trauma with a commitment to both justice and restoration. Compassion is the wish to see others free of suffering. The third principle of a beloved community is that nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence recognizes that evildoers are also victims and are not evil people. The nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat evil, not people. The third principle of a community of belonging is shared humanity. Enoshuet mushufet, to recognize the humanity in each individual. It is a higher level of connection that is not just with an individual, but a commitment to the collective. Beings that have common experiences and emotions, but also innate qualities. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. Our fourth principle of a beloved community is that nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform people and societies. Nonviolence accepts suffering without retaliation, and unearned suffering is redemptive and has tremendous educational and transforming possibilities. The fourth principle of a community of belonging is resilience, gemishu, the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences. This includes being mentally, emotionally, and behaviorally flexible and adjusting to internal and external demands. When we learn how to be resilient, we learn how to embrace the beautiful broad spectrum of the human experience. The fifth principle of the beloved community is that nonviolence chooses love over hate. Nonviolence resists violence of the spirit as well as the body. Nonviolent love is spontaneous, unmotivated, unselfish, and creative. The fifth principle of a community of belonging is also love, ahava. Love is a range of positive emotions resulting in strong affection and admiration for someone or something based on valuing who they are. Love is an action, not just simply a feeling. And the sixth and final principle of the beloved community is that nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. The nonviolent resistor has deep faith that justice will eventually win. Nonviolence believes that God is a God of justice. And our sixth principle of a community of belonging is tzedek, it's justice. Justice, justice you shall pursue. So where do we go from here? As Jews with our own unique proximity to pain and trauma, we have, throughout history, experienced the worst of what humanity has had to offer. Particularly since October 7th, the complexity and the intersecting identities of being a Jew in this country and this world has taken on a new meaning. As we wrestle with multiple truths, advocating for our own humanity and the right to exist, fighting for the humanity of others here and all over the world is not a new thing for us. It is what we have always done. This week's Parsha, Shemot, highlights a sort of evolution of sorts. The Israelite people are depicted as kind of being aware and trying to figure out how to make the connections with their loved ones, in need of purpose and organization. By the end of the book of Exodus, we have new teachers who emerge to meet that moment: Shifra, Pua, Aaron, and Moses. We have new tools like the Torah. We have a direction, and a transformation takes place. If we know this story, we know that these teachers risked their lives to do the right thing. We know MLK's life was cut short when he was only 39 years old for advocating for what was right. And there are so many others who have walked this path. Several years ago, when I was leading OUDC, I had the honor of meeting and spending time with the Reverend C.T. Vivian. And we crammed 30 kids into his home in Atlanta. And the one thing I remember that C.T. Vivian left with us, a question, of course, is what is it you are committed to enough to give your life for? He said every day I woke up, I asked myself that question, and I knew I was answering that question by doing the work that I was doing during the Civil Rights Movement. If we truly honor Dr. King's legacy, we know that he was no stranger to risk. His life was always at risk. In 1967, 11 months before King's assassination, he gave an interview with ABC News. In this interview, he talked about the new phase of the Civil Rights Movement. The initial premise of the work that was being done in the South was a struggle and the philosophy to break down the barriers of legal segregation and to end humiliation. And he felt that this, in large part, had been done. The South could no longer legally segregate black from white. But what was eerie and important about this interview is that you could still feel a sense of heaviness and hopelessness in King's voice. He understood, as he stated, watching the rest of what was happening in the country, specifically in the North, the ghettos, police brutality, economic injustice, that the fight had only just begun. In this interview, he talked about the equality only being an installment plan and understood more deeply how 244 years of slavery had dehumanized and thingified Black people. Freedom without food and loaded with famine is what he said. King saw that there needed to be much more done to move things forward. He talked about there being a cost, going back to what Reverend C.T. Vivian said, that to date, there hadn't really been a cost. If anything, the nation benefited economically for bringing people from the South to be a part of capitalism in the North. His idea of equality began to evolve to yearning for justice. He realized that people who have been in privileged positions, in order to move anything any further, would have to give something up. And here we are today. The moral arc of the universe is flailing in the wind and is in desperate, desperate need of help to bend it toward justice. How do we do this? How do we do this and live through King's legacy? We are honoring King's legacy by living our Jewish values, to have the stamina and the flexibility to hold the diversity of the narratives all at once. We know how to stand proud and strong in support of our Israeli family, and I pray very soon and hope for the return of our hostages. We know how to mourn and be horrified by the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the genocide in Sudan, the civil unrest in Haiti, displacement of millions in the Congo, the war in Ukraine, the war on democracy and people here in the United States, the rise in anti-Semitism, the persistent daily scourge of racism, the obvious climate change challenges, and many other things. We are living King's legacy by turning the pain into purpose and the purpose into progress. And progress not just for the Jewish community, but the community at large. We are living King's legacy by honoring our own sacred text. In the Torah, we know that you shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kinsman, but incur no guilt because of him. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against your countrymen. Love your fellow as yourself. In the Talmud, we learn that all people are descendants from a single person, so that no one person can say, my ancestor is greater than yours. God created humanity from the four corners of the earth: yellow clay and white sand, black loam and red soil. Therefore, the earth can declare to no part of humanity that it does not belong here, that this is not their rightful home. And lastly, we are living King's legacy by tapping into the power of memory and imagination. When I tap into memory, I instantly connect with my four grandparents: Estelle, Freddie, Walter, and Ruby. I knew each of them. The memories of who they are is forever etched in my soul. I can hear them whispering, sometimes shouting in my ear, "It's your turn. Write your story. Be the ancestor you want to be." And I can feel the drum beats of the rhythms they dance to forever etched in my memory. And if you listen closely, you can hear your ancestors and feel their presence. Imagination. What if they asked us, here's a clean sheet of paper. What do you want this world to look like 50 years from now? Imagine it, dream it, and start working towards it. The movement of beloved community, memory, imagination, and belonging will help us reunite this world. In closing, I want to leave you with an excerpt from Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail. It absolutely could be something that was written today. King said, Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned with what's happening in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives in the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its boundaries. To close, I want to take us back to where we started and thinking about the opportunity to start something new. I urge each of you to think about ways that you can create awareness that each particular day has never existed before and will never exist again. And because of that, there is a spiritual service needed on the day that is completely new. We have each new day to create the beloved community of King's Dream. We have each new day to create the community of belonging I described. With your goodness, you renew creation every day. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.